All right, what's up guys? Today we're gonna be doing a first impressions on the brand new Holbrook Arma tee. In this video, I'm only going to be covering the carbon fiber tee shape. However, there are multiple shapes and different options of this paddle. You can buy it in the metallic, which is the polyester face, or the raw carbon fiber face. Then there's two elongateds and then one wide body. But today we're just talking about the tee, which is an elongated with an elongated handle. Also, before we dive into this video, this is a format we're gonna be trying out a lot more this summer, so I would love your feedback on it. This is something we kind of used to do in the past, but now that I'm going to have a court in my backyard, which is not what we're in right now, it'll be a lot easier to pump out content. And I think there's so many paddles coming out, and there's a lot of paddles that are good that don't necessarily get coverage because the way we do our reviews, we hit them for about 1 to 2 weeks and then we make our video. So you can do the math. You're never gonna outpace the amount of paddles coming out if you're hitting them that long. So these first impressions are meant to be, hey, we hit them for an hour, here's what we're thinking right now. Then you can use that information to make a purchase on launch day if that's what you're looking for. But these are not meant to replace a full review. It's just meant to supplement and hopefully help you make a decision a little bit quicker rather than waiting a couple weeks for us to finish a full review. All right, so the first thing we got to talk about is the price of these paddles, because this actually is a little bit different than most of the power paddles that are out right now. So the carbon fiber versions are going to be $260, and then the metallic versions are going to be $280. And then you can use discount code PB Studio, which will shave off 15% instead of the usual 10%. So on the carbon fiber versions, that drops it down to about $220, and then on the metallic, it drops to about $240, which is a decent bump down from a lot of the power paddles you can buy right now. Usually after discount code, about the best you're gonna get is $250 or so. And then there's some power paddles that you just can't even get a discount on. So one of the big selling points of the Arma series is what they're calling their dual density core. And essentially they took 2 cores and then fused them together inside of a Gen 3 mold. So the top portion of the paddle is a denser core material, and then on the bottom, it's a less dense core material or a bigger cell. You know, I think it's around 11 to 12 millimeters for that bigger cell, and then I think the top ones are closer to about 8 millimeters. So this is the first time we've ever seen a company try this design before, and the claim that they're making is that by having the denser material up top, it's going to help with mishits, because they're claiming that's where most people miss, and the denser material will help offset that. And we're gonna talk about that a little bit more. I don't know that it necessarily does what they claim it does. However, I do think this paddle has a pretty good sweet spot. And I'm sure you have heard us talk a bunch about this paddle on podcasts or in different areas, but the biggest thing I am concerned about is durability. I have seen a ton of x-rays of this paddle, and not a single one of those x-rays looks good. I've even seen images of people who have cut these paddles open to check on the core, and some of them were slightly core crushed, similar to how the mod or the Gen 3s were last year. So that really doesn't make me optimistic about how these are gonna hold up long term. Holbrook is holding pretty strong that they have done tons of testing on these and that they haven't had any issues. But I can tell you just from experience of seeing paddles like this and playing with paddles like this, that they usually don't hold up if they look this bad in an x-ray. Now, maybe this will be the one time that things don't hold true and that Holbrook is right and the reviewer community is wrong, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on that. So if you are worried about paddles that can core crush, this is one that I would put a big asterisk on, and I probably wouldn't recommend buying it if you're worried about that. Now, if you're someone who played with a mod and a Gen 3 and you're like, I don't care about core crushing, I'll just warranty the paddle, then there are a lot of good things I have to say about this if you are that type of player who just doesn't really care. But yeah, durability is looking pretty questionable on this paddle. And then outside of that dual density core, they did do a really thick ring of EVA foam around the core of the paddle. In fact, I think it might be the thickest EVA ring for a Gen 3 paddle that I have seen on the market today. But with all of that out of the way, let's hit the paddle and tell you what we think. So now, as far as the dual density core goes, honestly, I don't know that it's making the sweet spot better because of that. Whether it's the foam that's actually increasing the sweet spot, I don't know. For an elongated, I think this is one of the better feeling sweet spots I've hit in a minute. I think it actually feels extremely good. But when I'm bouncing a ball around the paddle, whether I hit it up here or right here, I don't notice a big difference between when I'm hitting the larger cells or the smaller cells. So I don't know. To me, that kind of feels like a gimmick. Maybe it is working because the sweet spot's actually good, but I personally feel like I'd attribute that to other things and not necessarily the dual density core. All right, so we've had the Arma tee for a couple weeks now, so this is kind of like a first impressions plus because it's actually been used a decent amount and this is not the first day we've taken it out. But what I find interesting about this paddle, at least for me, is first of all, I find it extremely fun. I think this is probably one of the most fun paddles I've played in a minute. I love how it feels, like it's very fun. It's loud. Like if you remember how loud the paddle techs are, this is like that and then maybe a little bit more, or at least in the same realm where when you take a big serve or a big crack at an overhead, it is very loud. And people are probably gonna comment about how loud this paddle is. So I find it very fun. However, I don't play that well with it. And I don't really think that is the fault of the paddle per se. I think it's the pop and power level is what I struggle with. One, because it hits so hard, I just feel the need to take giant swings at everything. So I'm just taking these massive drives when really what I should probably be doing is swinging 70, 80%, and I'll get more than enough power. And then similarly at the net, it's just so poppy that I just want to kill everything and just like make someone pay for popping a ball up when, again, probably don't need to swing that hard. So that might be part of it, and maybe more time I would start playing better with it, but I just find that like I'm missing returns or I'm popping up a dink or a reset is a little bit high. All right guys, so I have to cut this in here really quick. After we shot this initial first impressions, I actually went out and played with this paddle some more that evening just to get some more B-roll for the video. And I have some updated thoughts, and we're gonna kind of scrap some of the earlier stuff that I had initially recorded because I think my updated thoughts are a little more important. So first, I'm gonna talk about the durability, and then I'll talk about how the paddle plays, and you guys can kind of make your own judgment from there. But I think the durability is gonna be a really important thing to talk about. So my paddle is not crunching right now, and if I hold the paddle up to my microphone on my shirt, you can hear there's no crunching. I'm pressing very hard on the paddle and it's completely fine. But when I went and played with it, I just noticed it was hitting way harder than I remember hitting it. We've hit this for a number of sessions at this point, and initially I was like, oh yeah, I really like how this paddle plays. It's not too powerful, it's not too poppy, but it's definitely up there. And last night, I could not keep a ball in to save my life. And I've had this happen a lot of times as I've tested paddles over the years where it was fine initially, and then I start having some sessions where everything goes long, and I'm like, oh, is it me? That's kind of weird. But every single time it has been one of these things, it always ends up being that the paddle is on its way to breaking. And then you combine that with the bad looking x-rays and the teardowns where it appears that the core is crushed. I just have a feeling this paddle is on its way out. Like if I gave this to one of my really hard hitters right now, I have a feeling it would not be very long until this paddle goes out. In fact, I even used my buddy's Yola Pro 4 Perseus 14 millimeter last night, and he's been using it for probably 2 months now. So if there's a break-in period on it, it's broken in at this point. It's very well used. And this put that thing to shame in terms of power. I mean, this thing just feels crazy on the court in comparison to his, both in pop and power. So to me, that's a sign this is heating up, and I just don't think that's good. So if you have used a mod or a Gen 3 before, and you didn't care about warrantying it or core crushing, sure, this is awesome. I really like how it plays. It's a lot of fun, but a lot of times broken paddles are very fun to play with. But if you are someone who cares about that and you don't want to deal with any of that, then I would, for now, say hold off. Wait until there are more people in the public who have put a lot of hours on it and can tell you whether theirs broke or not. Now, with that durability disclaimer out of the way, in terms of how this paddle plays on the court, it's a very stiff paddle in comparison to a lot of Gen 3s right now. So a lot of times, or a lot of the Gen 3s right now, they're kind of focusing on dwell time. You get that pocketing of the ball feel. This kind of goes the opposite direction. This is a very stiff paddle. You know, some people might say it hits like a board. I don't even think of it as a bad way. While it is very different from all the Gen 3s out there, I actually think it plays really nice. And I think the fact that we get another paddle offering that is different from some of these other Gen 3s is appealing. But if you're someone who likes that dwell time feeling, you're not gonna get a lot of that here. I mean, it's very stiff. And when you're at the net, like the ball just jumps off extremely quickly. And I think for some people, that might make shaping the ball more difficult in terms of spin. As I've been playing with it, I don't think spin is bad, but you just don't get that sensation of like, ah, yeah, I can like really shape the ball easily with this paddle. As you can imagine from what I said a second ago about barely being able to keep the ball in play, this paddle is extremely aggressive. Drives, overheads, blocks at the net, counter punches, all of it is extremely aggressive. Like if you are someone who likes to bang your way out of a point or overwhelm your opponent with really heavy volleys, this paddle is going to do that top tier. So if you're comparing it to some of the other Gen 3s out there, you might hear lack of dwell time and stiff and view it as a bad thing, but the way I see it is it's kind of separating itself from the pack. While those attributes are maybe attributes that people are desiring less these days, I think there are a lot of people who would really like this, especially because I feel like you just feel very connected to the ball. Like you know exactly where you hit it, you know how you hit it, like it gives a nice clean feedback when you hit it, and there's a lot of people that really like that. So I would view it less as like, oh, it's a downgraded Gen 3 and more just a different style of Gen 3. So yeah, that should about wrap this video up for me. I hope that helps give you guys just a glimpse of kind of what this paddle is about. I really hope that this paddle does not have durability issues, because if it doesn't end up having any, I think this is going to be a top tier paddle that a lot of people are going to love, and it will put Holbrook on the map. Before, they were kind of this catalog company that weren't really innovating, they weren't really doing anything interesting, but I do think this is interesting, and I think they've created a very high performance paddle. But there's no way with the X-rays and the teardowns I'm seeing that I can ignore these issues and say, yeah, go ahead and buy it. So just keep that in mind if you are going to pick one of these up. But anyways, I'll catch you guys later.